The Great Gatsby podcast, chapters 1 to 3, in the perspective of Nick Carraway. In my younger days, my father gave me some advice that has been constantly in my mind. I learned from my father to reserve judgment about other people, because if I hold them up to my own moral standards, I will misunderstand them. This is the case with Gatsby, whom represents everything I scorn, but I exempt him out of my usual judgments as Gatsby's personality is nothing short of gorgeous. In the summer of 1922, I had just arrived in New York, where I moved so that I could work in the bond business, which was very popular at the time. I had rented a house on a part of Long Island called West Egg. Unlike the conservative, aristocratic East Egg, West Egg is home to the newly rich. My own house was an eyesore compared to the lavish mansion of Gatsby, my neighbor. One night, I was nicely invited to East Egg to have dinner with my cousin Daisy and her husband, Tom Buchanan, whom I've known from my days at Yale. Like always, Tom looks like a powerful figure. Tom leaves the room to take a phone call, and Daisy follows him immediately. Daisy's best friend, Jordan, then tells me that the call is from Tom's lover in New York. After an awkward dinner, the party breaks up and I decide that it's time for me to leave. Tom and Daisy hint that they would like to see Miss Baker and I together in the near future. The commuter train that runs between West Egg and New York passes through the valley, making several stops along the way. One day, as Tom and I are riding this very train into the city, Tom forces me to follow him out of the train at one of these stops. We end up at George Wilson's garage, which sits on the edge of the Valley of Ashes. I find out that Tom's lover, Myrtle, is actually Wilson's wife. Known for his nature, Tom taunts Wilson and then orders Myrtle to follow him to the train. Tom takes us to New York City to the Morningside Heights apartment where he keeps his affair. Here's where our unplanned party with Mr. McGee and Miss McGee, Myrtle's sister, and Catherine begin. We all began to drink excessively. This is the second time that I've gotten drunk in my whole entire life. The flamboyant behavior and conversation of everyone begins to turn me away. At the same time, the antics of these people had gotten me so fascinated. Myrtle grows louder and more obnoxious the more she drinks. She begins to talk about Daisy. Tom harshly warns her never to mention his wife. Myrtle angrily says that she will talk about whomever she wishes to. Tom responds by breaking her nose, bringing the party to an end. I leave after this in my drunken state with Mr. McGee, and I take the 4 a.m. train back to Long Island. It was brought to my attention that one of the many reasons that Gatsby has become so famous around New York is because he throws very elegant parties every weekend at his mansion. One day, Gatsby's chauffeur invites me to one of these lavish parties. At the day of the party, I make a short walk to Gatsby's house. I feel somewhat out of place among all these strangers. I run into Jordan Baker again. Gatsby's party is almost unbelievably luxurious. Guests go crazy over his Rolls Royce, his swimming pool, his beach, and a live orchestra playing under the stars. With all this happening, Jordan and I set out to find Gatsby. Instead, we run into a middle-aged man in Gatsby's library. While sitting at a table, Jordan and I come across a handsome young man who says that I look familiar to him. We realize that we served in the same division during the war. The man introduces himself as none other than J. Gatsby. J. Gatsby's speech is elaborate and formal, and he has a habit of calling everyone old sport, including myself. As the party progresses, I become increasingly captivated with Gatsby. I notice that Gatsby does not drink and that he keeps himself separate from the party, watching his guests in silence. A butler then tells Jordan that Gatsby would like to see her. Jordan comes out from her meeting with Gatsby saying that she has learned something extraordinary. I say goodbye to Gatsby and leave the party. Life has recently been favoring me. I've actually done a lot of other things than attending all these elaborate parties. I work in New York City, through which I get to enjoy many long walks, and I met a woman from New Jersey. We were in a brief relationship, which actually didn't last too long. Then I decided to follow the advice of Tom and Daisy. I began seeing Jordan Baker. I find out that Jordan is essentially a dishonest person. I just knew that there was something about her, as she cheated in her first golf tournament. Despite her dishonesty, for some strange reason, I'm beginning to get attracted to her, even though I'm one of the few honest people that I've ever come across in my whole entire life.